Hey everyone, it's Mark Elliott with MeBe Trucker. Want to talk to you really quick about some of the basics you're going to want to know about jumping into the trucking industry. Okay, so I will tell you right now, the trucking industry is booming. It's 2021. It's January, near the end of January of 2021, and it's still going strong, and it's expected to go strong. There is a high demand for truckers than probably ever before. So real quick, I want to talk about the a couple different styles. I want to talk about one, what kind of driving lanes you'll be doing, and we'll go over the basics of each one of those. We're also going to go over what kind of trailers you're going to pull, right? So there's a couple different options that are available to you from that standpoint. And then realistically, if you're going to join a company or if you're going to be a lease to own or owner operator, just a couple quick basics you're going to want to know about each one of those as well. All right, so let's start it off, shall we? So the first type is going to be the OTR. It basically means over the road. It means that you're long distance haulers. These are typically what most new truckers start off with, and they do so because they're going to get your most miles in. When you start off with a new company, if you're starting off with a new company, or if you're driving on your own, you're going to want to get miles up to begin with. A lot of places will, whether it's insurance or whatever, the more miles you've driven, basically equals experience. More so than technically the amount of months or years you might have been with a company. Not always, but sometimes. The other is regional, and so this basically means that if you're the state you're in, plus a couple surrounding states around you, it means you're typically going to be driving those. More often, they're dedicated routes, or it could simply mean that you're an owner, operator, or lease to own that doesn't want to drive that far. You know, that typically doesn't mind maybe spending a couple days out, but wants to be home every couple days. This is perfect for that regional person. It's a perfect lane for a lot of people, and it works. And you can make some good money coming out of that too, and get some good miles. And the last is local. Typically, these are favored, right? Because it's more of an 8 to 5 kind of a job. You're out there, 5 days a week. You're home every 2 days, and you're typically these are also very more common as far as being very dedicated routes. Okay, so 3 different areas to go through if you're going to be new into the trucking industry. More often than not, you're going to be OTR, over the road. But again, that's not a bad thing. You want those miles. And for most truckers, miles equals money, right? The more miles you make, the more money you're putting in your pocket. And that's not a bad thing. So we're going to shift really quick into the type of trailers that you're going to get. I would say most new drivers are going to be driving the dry vans, and these are the dry vans. You've seen these everywhere. It's just a typical cargo box. It's a 53-footer in most cases, and you'll drive those and haul those all over America, right? It's a beautiful thing. The next up is the reefer truck, and the reefer truck is basically means it's short for refrigerated truck. It's typically hauling a lot of temperature controlled goods, more often than not food, right? The advantage about this is that reefer trucks, because they are carrying food, are pretty much economy proof, right? It doesn't matter how bad the economy gets. People may stop buying televisions and sofas and sporting goods, right? But they're still going to put food on the plate. And so those reefer trucks are constantly running. The weather bad economy is better than anybody else out there. And so it's a good place to be in. Some of the negatives is that there's a refrigerated unit to it, which makes noise. It's an engine itself, or has a motor going. And so if you're sleeping, it can be kind of difficult to sleep because you're hearing that thing not more than a couple feet away from you or from your cab while you're trying to get a couple Z's. So just think about that. But again, not a bad place to be either, especially with everything that's going on unknowing, if you will. The next is going to be flatbed. Pretty self-evident, right? Open and exposed. The pros on this is that they typically pay you a little bit more money because there's a lot more physical demand on flatbeds. Every time you get a load, you're basically having to tarp it, and then you're either chaining it or strapping it down, and then you have to unstrap it. Now, typically you get paid extra for that, but it's a lot more work to it, I guess, if you will, too. And it's not for everybody. Those tarps are not light. On average, they're about 250 pounds by themselves. That's dry. You get them wet or frozen, man, it's a rough day. So just be thoughtful of that. Be mindful of that. But again, they do pay well, and there's some great companies that even hire new drivers to do flatbed. But be aware of it, if you will. And then there's the tanker. And not all tankers are gas, right? Tankers also bring flour and milk and things of that nature, which you don't need a hazmat license for. But if you are going to do oils or chemicals and stuff, you will need to get a hazmat license to go along with that. The tanker is I think it's in Tennessee. It's a $3 endorsement. I've got it myself. Don't plan on driving tankers right away, but I want to make sure it's there anyways. And that's just one last thing I have to go to the DMV for. It was like 20 questions, super easy to do. If you're considering getting your CDL license, I highly suggest it as well. And then there's also the double and triple trailer, right? So this is basically pulling 2 or 3 trailers. Again, there's extra money into that one. The endorsement's pretty inexpensive. It's a couple, an extra 20 questions, I think, 25 questions on that one. Again, another $3 endorsement. Like I said, the tanker and the double triple will sit on your license for as long as you have your CDL. So if you renew it all the time, there's nothing else you got to do for that double, triple, and or tanker. The last endorsement is called the hazmat. And I want to say this is a 2 or 3 year. You have to go back every couple of years and go back and get that completed, take a new test, make sure you're up to date on everything that's hazmat. Most companies will pay you more for a hazmat license, whether you're driving or not. Not always. Some will basically say, hey, listen, you have to drive the hazmat. I know the company I'm with, they pay me a penny per mile, whether I'm driving hazmat or not, just for having the license, right? Doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're doing 12,000 miles a month, you multiply that throughout the year, it adds up pretty quick, right? Now this course is going to run you about $12 or $13, depending, $12 to $15 depending where you're at. You have to get fingerprinted, and you have to go ahead and have a background check done. And then the test itself is $87. So this one is definitely a little bit more expensive. But if you got the $100 to throw out there and get it done, I would highly suggest doing so, because if you figure, if I'm pulling in 12,000 miles in a month at a penny more, that's $120 every month that I'm getting. My first month I paid for it. The other 11 months are bonus. So just look at it from that aspect of it. But again, if you're looking to maximize your money, hazmat's a great way to go. All right. Then now let's kind of shift. We've talked about the different lanes you'll be having, the different trailers you're going to be having, and then let's talk about the basic differences between company, lease to own, and owner operator. So company, I would highly suggest if you're a new driver, jump into a company, right? Because any CDL school is going to teach you how to get a CDL license. You'll get a couple hours, you'll get some hours behind a truck, but it's just backing up, doing a couple maneuvers. You'll do a little bit on the road, but again, just enough to get your CDL license. They're not really training you to be a trucker. They're training you to understand the basics of what a trucker maneuvers are. Whatever new company you go to is going to basically train you to be a trucker. And so oftentimes you're going to get paid a little bit less, especially that first year, because you have to go through a training mode. It doesn't matter how good you were at CDL school, they're going to require you anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months to spend time with a trainer, which means you're living with somebody you don't know in a very small cab, okay? Understand that's going to be there. Get over the fares and everything else. Understand it's only limited. After that, you have an option. You can drive solo, or you can drive teams. Driving teams means that truck is constantly moving. You're going to be 10 hours on, then you're going to be sleeping for 10 hours or in the back for 10 hours while the other person is up driving. So the good news is every time that truck is moving, is making miles, you are making money. Whether it doesn't matter if you're driving or your team member's driving, you're both making money. And that's the goal. And so you get to places a whole lot faster that way, but it also means you're sleeping in the back of a truck just doing 70 miles an hour. So be aware of that. I'd say 70, 62 to 65. Most companies have their trucks governed. Okay, as you get past that, you're going to go into lease to own. Now, this may seem like a really good enticement, especially if you're new, because they're going to say, hey, listen, you're going to get more money from the lease to own. And although that's true, you're going to get stuck with the maintenance bills. You're going to get stuck with anything happens to that truck, you're responsible for it, right? Again, it's kind of like a crapshoot, be careful of this one. I personally would never consider doing it, especially in my first year, as I'm still learning the ropes. But, it may be something that you're interested in. All I would say is research the heck out of it. Most cases, that lease to own means you're also basically living that contract with that company too. So even if you decide to say, hey, forget it, I'm done, oftentimes they're not going to let you take that truck. You're like, well, that's not how this works, right? So be careful of that one. But if you're with a good company and you're in a good place, maybe it is the right thing for you. All right, just be conscientious of it. That's all I ask. And the last is the owner operator, and this is the one that provides the most amount of freedom. And if you're going to be new to owner operator, don't buy a new truck. Right, get out there and buy a used truck, maybe 6, 7 years old or 5 years old. Don't go much older than that, because a lot of loads, a lot of companies won't work with you if your truck's too old, right? From a safety standpoint. So, if you can get one that's 4 or 5 years old, that's great. A lot of these big mega carriers, they get rid of their trucks after about 3 years, and they're constantly updating their trucks. And so, great time to buy one of those trucks is when they're doing some of those auctions. So, figuring that stuff out could be a great way. You make the most amount of money here, but the other part is 100% everything is on you, right? If you feel like you can be a great business person, this is the way to go. If you're good at keeping in line with your expenses, great place to go. If you want freedom, right, to pick what jobs you're going to do and what jobs you're not, owner operator may be the way for you as well too, right? And then as you continue to build up and you start making some more money on owner operators, you'll see a lot of these people, they'll start buying more trucks, and they'll put people in their own trucks, and they'll start building up their own little truck empire that are out there. There are literally tens of thousands of small trucking companies that are out there of less than 10 trucks or more, or 10 trucks or less. I'm sorry. And oftentimes they'll start up with a little yard and dispatch and